Hello there. I'm Rob Hudson. I'm a member with the law firm Frost Brown Todd, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our NKBA Legends series. The NKBA Legends series serves our legal profession by providing information to inspire and guide attorneys in developing ethical, responsible, and effective practice and business development skills. In the Legends program, we're presenting a series of interviews with attorneys who've made their mark on the community and the profession here in Northern Kentucky. Now, sometimes it's difficult to get the most successful people to talk about themselves, but that's exactly what this program is designed to do for the purpose of helping others to learn from the experiences of professionals in our community, again, who've made their mark on our profession. Now, during the program today, if you have questions of our interviewee, please present them using the public chat feature on the Zoom. It'll be at the bottom of your screen. And at the end of the program, we'll follow up on as many of those as time permits. Today, we're pleased and proud to have the opportunity to talk with NKBA legend Stephanie. And by way of introduction, Stephanie's been practicing as a family law attorney in Northern Kentucky for more than 25 years. She founded her firm, Dietz Family Law, PLLC, in addition to holding various community leadership posts. As president of the Academy of Northern Kentucky Collaborative Professionals, Stephanie's developed collaborative practices to assist parties with amicable dispute resolution. In 2005, she was named as one of the Cincinnati Business Courier's top 40 under 40. She's been named as a Cincinnati leading lawyer since 2009 until the present here in 2021. She served as a board member for 10 years for Legal Aid of the Bluegrass, served as the secretary of that board. She's a past recipient of the Volunteer Lawyer of the Year Award in Northern Kentucky. She currently serves as an NKBA board member, and she's a past chair of the NKBA Family Law section. Stephanie's married to another prominent Northern Kentucky lawyer, Jim Dietz, and she's the proud mother of two remarkable young men. Stephanie, it's great to welcome you to the program as a legend. We appreciate you participating in the NKBA Legends program.
Thanks, Rob. I don't know that I'm old enough. I don't feel old enough to be considered a legend, but thank you.
Well, let's start from the beginning. I'm just going to ask a series of questions, and what were your earliest influences that you think kind of put you on the right path with a strong foundation for becoming an attorney?
I grew up outside of Lexington in Versailles, in Woodford County, and my dad was in the military. So when I was very small, we moved around quite a bit. My mom ended up with a teaching job in Woodford County, and that's how we ended up there. And when my dad got out of the military, he also took a teaching position in Woodford County schools. So by the time I was in high school, my dad was an assistant principal at the middle school, and my mom was still teaching math at the high school. But my mom and dad, a lot of hard work watching them. I don't think my mom finished her master's degree until the year before I went to college. So growing up, one of my two parents was always going to UK, working on, rank 1, master's degree, whatever it was, so that they could continue to teach. So I saw, their hard work. My dad also coached the speech and debate team at the high school. So I tagged along a little bit on those competitions. And I would say my dad was the shove towards law. It wasn't even a gentle push, it was a shove.
So it's good to start out with a shout out to mom and dad.
Yeah.
That's terrific. One of the things that we do consistently here when we talk to successful lawyers is how at an early age, almost all of them had mentors who really selflessly helped them along. And I understand you had an early legal profession mentor back in undergrad at the University of Kentucky. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was really, really fortunate. When I was at UK, I was in a sorority, and one of my sorority sisters knew I wanted to go to law school, approached me and said, my boyfriend's dad is a judge and his best friend just left a big law firm and is starting his own practice and needs some help. And so I applied. It was Stokes Harris, and I think Stokes has recently retired. Stokes was a family law attorney. I didn't know that when I went to work for him. And this is back in the day before we did everything. I'm so old. Before email. And so in Lexington and Fayette County, you hand delivered everything. So I was a runner. You would deliver everything to other attorneys. You would deliver it to the courthouse. So no e-filing or anything like that. But Stokes did more for me than just let me work in his office. I drove him because he did his practice was in central Kentucky. I have no sense of direction if you know me at all, so I'm sure it was an adventure for Stokes while I was driving in my little Escort, and he would try to do work. But we went to Harrodsburg. We were all over. But I sat in depositions. I sat in settlement conferences. I sat with some of the biggest names, people being divorced, other attorneys that were handling the cases on the other side. I watched him lose his temper. I watched him bring his temper back down. It truly formed me early on in the type of attorney I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to do family law after working for him for so long. And I knew I wanted a very similar practice to what he had, which was, large asset type cases and that type of clientele and a sophisticated law practice. So I was really, really fortunate to have somebody that was so generous with their time and really it's about time, sitting down and explaining things to somebody.
And all of that when you had a runner position, that is an extraordinary opportunity.
Yeah.
And well, after UK, you went on to Chase College of Law, and I wanted to ask you if there's wisdom or experience that you can pass on about your Chase experience beyond just learning the law at Chase. What is it that kind of stays with you, and what advice would you pass on to the law students of today?
It's kind of what I've told my kids too. I have high school friends, I have college friends, and I have my law school friends. My very best friends still are my law school friends. We refer each other cases, we call each other. There's probably 5 or 6 of us that text every single week. But those friendships, you go on, and number of them are county attorneys, Commonwealth attorneys, other positions throughout Ohio and Kentucky. But that's just so important, is to take that time, and it's competitive when you're there, but to take away that those are friendships you're going to have for the rest of your life. And for me, they're some of the most important friendships that I have. So that's the number one takeaway for me on what happened in law school, was the friendships that I left with.
Yeah, and get your head out of the book every now and then, and pay attention to the people around you, and build part of your future that way.
Yeah, because those nobodies are going to be somebody's one day, and helpful, but that's the real takeaway now.
Right.
No, I mean, just to enjoy some of that weekend time to build those relationships, because that's what the practice of law, a lot of it's about, is building relationships. So you may as well start in law school.
Well, and you and I have known each other for a while, and also it was just great. We spent a little time talking in preparation for today, and I loved hearing about the early experiences that you had in Northern Kentucky when you were, I don't know if you were clerking at that time or if you were actually practicing at that time, but the names that you were throwing out, the relationships that you had as a young lawyer is just incredible. What I kept thinking when we were talking, I said, wow, that's a who's who of great lawyers in Northern Kentucky. And if you could share a little bit about your good fortune in working with these folks as a newer lawyer in the region.
Yeah, I think some of that started in law school. My first job was at the Children's Law Center, and Kim Brooks had just started that maybe 1 or 2 years before I became, I think it was an IOLTA fellow is what they called it. I think that's what they called it. And so I met Kim and was very involved at the Children's Law Center. And after I worked for Kim for a couple of years, I worked for Gary Edmondson's private office as a law clerk with Bob Calvert. Arnold Simpson was in the office, so I did some work for him. and watched Gary run for county attorney. I think then he was running against John Elfers. In and out of that office. Gabe Summey ran his campaign, and that's before Gabe went to law school. So I got to watch a campaign being run. All those people were wonderful. And again, in the time that they gave to a law clerk. So that's all before I started practicing. When I started practicing, my first job was with Deanna Dennison. A lot of people forget that. So I did criminal law with family law for about a blink, and worked for Deanna for about 2.5 years. She's a huge mentor, and for a lot of reasons. They don't teach you how to ask a client for money when you're in law school. They don't teach you work ethic when you're in law school. And she was a female attorney with large, high profile criminal cases at the time I started working for her. I would dare say there's anybody that works harder than Deanna, longer hours, and taught me a lot the 2.5 years I was there. And there were other great mentors that came along in areas of practice that I wanted to do. I wanted to do adoption law. And I think this is a story I may have shared with you, Rob. Deanna gave me an adoption that came in, and I'm going to admit there was no malpractice. I may have committed a felony, but corrected that right away. But Deanna gave me an adoption to handle.
Yeah, I don't think I was going to make a point of that.
Yeah. And it was an interstate adoption, and I didn't know any better. I just thought you could get that baby from Ohio and bring it right across the bridge, and that was okay. Well, it's not. And I had reached out to Gail Hoffman and Suzanne Citrillo, and I think they both said, "Oh my God, you committed a felony. You need to write letters to Ohio and Kentucky and apologize and tell them you're just young and dumb and you didn't know any better, and here's how you're going to fix it." So I did that. But what happened after that, I mean, getting to know Suzanne Citrillo, Gail Hoffman, Margot Grubbs, John Cummer, Mike Sketch, all those people that did a lot of adoption work became mentors for me in how to handle other cases that would come my way because of an area of practice that I wanted to start to evolve.
Well, and I also understand you had this amazing opportunity as a newer lawyer, the Asante versus Moore case. And, it sounds like they're high profile cases, but it doesn't get any higher profile than this case. And if we could spend a few minutes, if you could share with us how that case was presented to you and what became of it and how it ended up helping to shape what would become a remarkably successful career in family law for you.
Yeah, I had, I believe it was the birth mom reached out to me initially. And I can't remember if it had been a referral from, at that time, legal aid before the merger and we were legal aid at the Bluegrass. But I made an appointment with her and the father of the child, and they came into my office, and I think I was maybe 4 years practicing by that time, and knew enough about adoption that when they came in and they said they wanted the baby returned to them, it had only been within the statutory time frame. And I started to look at the consent, and it wasn't prepared correctly. They had taken parts of a termination statute, part of the adoption statute, and as simply as I can say, they just kind of mixed it all together. So the time frames then that were in the statute didn't make sense with what was written. And I felt that they could ask for the baby to be returned. And for a lot of people, they kind of like, that sounds ugly. But the way our adoption laws are written is that the birth parents have some control for at the beginning. It's their child, and they have a right to have that child returned. And then after everything goes, the time frames start to move along, then it's the prospective adoptive couple that starts to have more of that control. So when mom and dad came in to see me, I was like, yeah, there's something wrong here, but I think we can ask for the child back. And we sent a letter. We did all the things, certified letter that we were supposed to do. To say that the case started to go in a direction that I just never, ever would have contemplated is not even an exaggeration, but it got to the point that I contacted legal aid. These were people that didn't have a lot of money. I wasn't making any money off of it. I was just trying to help. and contacted Glenda Harrison and said, hey, will you meet with me over this case? And we met, and Dick Collison came in, and they agreed that they would represent Mom and I would continue to represent Dad. And that case then went on to be litigated up to the Supreme Court in Ohio over jurisdiction, and then in Kentucky over the entire adoption custody case. So that is still good law that's on the books, Asante versus Moore. I was pregnant both times with my kids during that case. Remember driving up to northeastern Ohio for a hearing twice. The first time, my feet swelled so bad, I was so far along that my shoes didn't fit the next morning. But one of the judges stepped down off the bench, and I think it was Court of Appeals. She came over and told me that I had reminded her of her when she was a young attorney. And then the second time was I was pregnant with Alex. We were in Kentucky. So, it was a very high profile case. 2020 started calling, Oprah was calling, all the news shows.
I think when Oprah calls, you're onto something, right?
Yeah. And those were really important lessons because we represent the clients. And again, as a baby lawyer 4 or 5 years out, I think you would want to go, yeah, I'll do every interview. I'm gonna totally make a name for myself. But if you're looking out for your client's interest, that's not what you necessarily do. Ultimately, our clients did appear on 2020, and that was the only major interview that they gave. You just have to, I think when the media is involved, you just have to, there's obviously ethical rules on that every attorney should read, but our job's not to take advantage of those for our own benefit or to bolster ourselves. I think you should just be very cautious if you ever have that opportunity for a case like that.
Well, and I think, so you're basically, you're losing money every hour you're working on the case.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not, when I've had cases like that, I hope for an early resolution. That didn't happen. So it was, I guess, it was a multi-year undertaking, it sounds like. So what good beyond helping the clients came out of that situation for you?
Oh gosh, for me personally, I think along with that, I think there became some respect from other attorneys in Northern Kentucky. It was time consuming. I don't even know that I could tell you how many hundreds of hours that were spent between Ohio and Kentucky, and the hours that Dick and Glenda and I spent together and our staff spent together. But I think the respect of the other attorneys in Northern Kentucky, and from that, I know that Dick Collison had reached out to me and said, hey, you think you might want to be on our board at Legal Aid? And that began 10 years of board service. So I don't know if that was it was a good thing, but it was that's also a time commitment when you're looking at an organization like that. But definitely, client development, I think a reputation for myself. I certainly learned litigation handling that case. So I think for my practice overall, it definitely formed the direction of my practice by having that case.
Well, and for a lot of the viewers who aren't familiar with the Northern Kentucky Bar and the practice here, one of the biggest events of the year is the luncheon where we name pro bono lawyer of the year. It's understood that that's a big event for our profession and really for our community. And you were too modest to say anything about this, but I guess I'll have to throw it in. The work on this case and your other service led to that honor. And I do want to ask you, how did that feel when you received that award and people's reaction to your efforts?
Yeah, again, I wish I was my age now and could go back, because I'll get a little teary-eyed over that whole case and that experience. But getting that award, I had no idea what I was walking into that day. But the judges were there. Judge Summy presided over this case, and you know, I will say she was extraordinarily brave. She would probably say she was doing her job, because she made some unpopular decisions also. But everybody in the room stood up, and I had never expected that I would get this standing ovation for doing something that I just thought was right. And I really wish I could go back and kind of be in that moment, because it was really overwhelming for me. But there were just so many people. I remember Dick Cullison saying, "Do you want to say something?" I was like, "Look, somebody should have told me that I was going to be asked to say a few words." But there were just so many people that were a part of that. And those were the people we called behind the scenes. John Cummer and Mike Sketch and you know, Suzanne Citrillo, all those people that did this type of work that we were kind of building on their experiences. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty overwhelming moment, probably one of my top 10 practicing.
Well, thanks. And I understand that you were about 10 years into your practice when you had a career move that had a big impact on your approach to practicing law. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I joined O'Hara, Ruberg, Taylor, Sloan, and Sargent, ORT. And I got to work for 10 years. I was a partner there. I worked with Gary Sargent and David Sloan and Mike O'Hara and Arnold Taylor and some of the best. And I didn't practice the type of law that they did. But again, it just continued that growth of what I think a good attorney is. And, you know, David Sloan's been KBA president. I think he's been NKBA president. So much bar involvement by that entire firm. But I remember Gary Sargent saying something to me, and Gary said, lawyers must always do the right thing. And every day I think about that. You know, when something, even if for just 1 second you think, oh, I could do that, you got to go back and say, but what's the right thing? Where's your moral compass headed on that? And we see this with attorneys and even judges all the time that take a different choice, make a different choice. But I just go back to Gary saying that, you know, we always have to do the right thing. And I think that's really important. But above, you know, almost any other law firm in Northern Kentucky, and they've changed some names now and some attorneys have retired, just bar service and what they have given back. And I don't know if people are, you know, aware of how important that is, whether it's with the KBA, the Bar Foundation, serving in different offices, and you know, Suzanne Cassidy writes ethics opinions. It's all about giving back to the bar, and nothing in return. There's nothing that's given back to you monetarily. You know, maybe you get a pat on the back, but it's about giving back to our legal community, because we should.
And it sounds like that group was extraordinarily committed to really elevating the profession and
Exactly.
looking for
Exactly.
the privilege that we have of practicing law. And it helps when everyone around you is singing from the same hymnal in that regard. So
Yeah.
What a great experience. And I know you ran for family court judge. I think twice. And were you still with the firm at that time?
Yes, the first time. I lost twice too, Rob. Just
well, but tell us about that. What a big decision. I mean, a lot of us haven't had the guts to take on that. I still think about it from time to time, but I'm not sure my disposition works very well in the political arena. But tell us how you what made you want to do that, and how it went for you, and what you learned as a result.
You know, so my elevator speech when I ran was that, you know, family court was not in existence when I started practicing. It wasn't there when I went to law school. So it wasn't one of those things where I thought, oh, one day I'll be a family court judge, or I might want to be a family court judge. But what I felt like when that opportunity presented itself in Kenton County, we had the pilot projects throughout the state. there were rumors that that was going to happen in Kenton County, and ultimately, I think Judge Stevens retired, and they took one of his seats, and then took a district court seat and formed family court in Kenton County. I felt that everything in my career and my background had prepared me to do that job. I had worked as a guardian ad litem on the panel. I had litigated cases. Everything. I was a CASA worker when I was at the Children's Law Center. There were so many things that I had done that I thought it would be a good fit. And my husband and I were young and dumb. I keep going back to that theme of being young and dumb. And I said, hey, they're doing family court. I think I might want to run. We didn't know what we were doing. We hired a campaign person, and it was a primary, and I did not come out of the primary the first time. But that experience, the first time around, you learn a lot of things about campaigns. I had not been involved in one, but there's a lot of camaraderie among everybody that runs. There were people that, there all the seats I think were up that year. So we had Commonwealth attorney, we had county attorney. We were all bumping into each other in every precinct that we were walking in. And you get to the point where you have to say, okay, there's 6 of us here. Maybe Chuck Vaughn needs to go to a different precinct, or Rob needs to go to a different one, because people are going to just start slamming their doors in our faces. So a lot of camaraderie with people, knocked on a lot of doors, met a lot of people, saw all of Kenton County. And, so it was a great experience. Just met so many people that, when somebody's willing to walk doors for you and write you a check, you just feel a certain sense of responsibility and kind of, just thankfulness that they believe in you and think that you would be a good fit for that job. So that was the first go around. And then the second time I ran, it was a contested election. So it was a general election, and it lasted just about 11 months because there was no primary. Again, absolutely the same thing. I was in a much different place in my career. And again, overwhelmingly, just going door to door, talking to people, hearing what their concerns are and what the court system wasn't doing for them. But I also found both times we do this every day. So we feel like we understand, we call, we get a hearing date, we know who our judges are. It's shocking to realize that a lot of our citizens, probably the majority of them, don't know who our judges are. They don't really care until it affects them or their family member. So until somebody's getting in family court a divorce or has a custody issue, they have no idea who sit. Right now, I probably ask my neighbors; they have no idea who sits down there. And so I find that a little surprising. The other piece is how expensive it is, because clients will say, why doesn't somebody run against XYZ? And I would say that it would be at least $100,000 to run a general election. And that's, you're looking at taking that out of your own pocket, hopefully asking, people for some of that, but it's a lot of money. And then your practice suffers for a certain amount of time. So those are things too. The general public doesn't understand the time and the commitment and what it takes to run a race, and the support that you need from the people around you.
So you had to be disappointed in the outcome, but what's the silver lining, if any?
The silver lining is, I'm very faithful, and I believe that God, we don't ever know. We can't question the path that we're on. I guess we can question it, but you don't know where you're headed until you look back and you go, oh, that made sense. And that's why I'm where I'm at. And I believe that there are people that I've been able to help. And I've taken on cases that maybe other people weren't willing to take on, and maybe fought a fight that somebody else wouldn't have fought or handled differently. And had I won, would I have been able to do those things? So I have to believe that there's a plan for me, and that just wasn't part of the plan. But to get where I'm going, I had to go through those experiences. So I don't think of those as negative experiences at all. And, obviously disappointed, because I think, I would have been a good fit but I also think that what I'm doing now makes a difference in people's lives. And my new passion is building this collaborative process that we started in Northern Kentucky 22 or so years ago, and spreading that. And I've recently met with Justice Keller about working on legislation in Kentucky because other states have that. So maybe that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So that's kind of how, you have to take a disappointment and figure out, where's that supposed to take you.
Well, I know a lot of the newer lawyers will be most interested in learning how you developed and grew a practice, because you had no question you have one of the most successful family law practices in the region. If you could share, particularly with newer lawyers, you start from scratch. How do you build a practice?
I actually think it could be.
Was that you said that was right?
It was having to go back to those days, which we were talking a little bit about before we came on. I think it may be a little different now, but definitely when I started, there was the guardian ad litem panel, and it's run a little differently now, but that is a great opportunity, I think, for newer and younger lawyers to get in the courtroom right away and meet the judges, meet other attorneys, and get some really great experience. There are some attorneys that they want that as their career forever and ever going forward. I did not. I wanted to have a private practice and do other things. So I think there's a lot to learn at the beginning from doing that. I was thinking about this morning, and when I worked for Deanna, one of the things I did is I put my name on the conflicts panel at the public defender's office. I don't even know if they do that anymore. But I was able to start to get cases that way and handle cases on my own immediately by doing that. The other is just networking. I was fortunate because Jim was at a law firm, and those attorneys were generous. And if they had a conflicts case, they sent it to me. And I got referrals from them. But I think it goes back to that, what you're building in law school, you continue to build when you get out of law school, which are relationships. And when I started practicing, there was not a Julie Jones running our bar association. So I don't recall there being the opportunities that the young lawyers have now for networking or mentoring. And those are things that I think our young lawyers should be jumping on those opportunities. We've got the, next week, and I'm going to lose it, and Julie's going to be so mad at me, but we've got the judicial kind of meet and greet law day. There we go. Law day next week. And that's a great opportunity to meet other attorneys. And I think we've got 40 or 50 people or something signed up. So it's going to be a great event, but it goes back to networking. So meeting other attorneys, reaching out and asking questions. You're never too old or have been doing this so long that you don't need to ask a question. And today, when we were talking, I said I read a great quote that said every person over 40 should have a mentor under the age of 40. And I believe that, because there's so much that we can continue to learn, and we kind of get stuck where we're at. I refuse to go paperless, and my law clerk's shaming me every day that we're printing. So I have a lot that I can learn. And so as a young attorney, just ask questions. Ask if you can come, co-counsel, but don't expect to get paid. Not everything has to be in dollars, because the payoff is much later on.
And it sounds like just showing up and not saying anything that's monumentally stupid can make a really big difference in building a practice. But showing up is key, right?
Showing up, absolutely showing up.
Well, I know a big part of how you developed your practice too was through your community service. And I know that we shouldn't be thinking of our community service purely in terms of business development, but boy, it seems like a lot of times the two end up going hand in hand. And you're probably like a lot of other lawyers in our region. Some of this didn't come completely naturally for you, pushing outside a comfort zone, but share with us some of your experiences with community service and the professional service posts that you've held in your career?
Yeah. So I would say community service. A lot of that stems from church, and my kids. And I was going to start by saying as a mom, but I think even as a mom or a dad, when you've got kids that are active, those are great ways to find times to spend with them and still give back. So my kids were at St. Pius, and I coached the academic team, the quick recall team there, and that was just a ton of fun to be around my son's friends. And we won, and that's even better when you get a bunch of smart kids and you win. So that was fun. And when they got to high school, I coached. I was lucky enough, and when you say, how privileged we are to be attorneys, I completely agree with that. But it was also my privilege to be able to coach the mock trial team at Covington Catholic. And I know Dixie, where your daughter participated at, Jim West was on the forefront of getting this program started, because I think administrative office of the courts did it for a long time. When I started, we were competing at Eastern, and it speaks volumes to the program and the attorneys that help these high schools, because it got so big and so popular that we had to go to regions. So, now it's statewide, and we have so many high schools that participate, and it's overwhelming when you watch how talented these kids are. And I know, Rob, you're going to agree with me, but they know the rules of evidence better than most lawyers I know. And
they make, when you see them argue, it makes you want to be a better lawyer. And they're just, in your spirit just soars when you see these young people compete. And I'm so glad that you mentioned, I was aware, of course, that you were involved in that as part of your service. I'm so glad that you mentioned it. And anyone who either watches this video or is in attendance, if you haven't participated in high school mock trial, what are you waiting for, right?
Oh, exactly. And watching all these kids is rewarding. And I'm just going to say, we were lucky enough. We took our kids, and I think Lauren participated in this. We went to, I can't remember if Dixie went. We went to Yale. We took a group of them to Yale to participate in the Bulldog mock trial tournament, thinking, okay, what we're competing with all these, private schools, East Coast, homeschool kids, which, if you don't know, when I say homeschool, there are some really top stellar homeschool teams. And we ended up 5th, and they only recognized the top 5 teams. So of course we felt like that was a huge win to leave the Yale mock trial tournament coming in 5th. But I think Highlands has participated in that. But you watch and you think, gosh, we're coaching these kids, and I'm nobody. I'm just this attorney in Northern Kentucky working with these kids, and it is it's so rewarding. So yeah, I absolutely would encourage other attorneys to become involved at some point on that high school level. The other organization that I've been very involved in is Navigo Scholars, and Tim Hanner used to be the superintendent in Kenton County, and Tim was instrumental in starting these different Navigo groups, and it's mentoring for high school students. And if you don't know Tim, they don't come too much better than Tim Hanner. And I think at some point it was run through Children's Inc., and now that has changed names. But the Legal Scholars is a little different, because Duke has a Navigo program. St. Elizabeth has a Navigo program. So that's easy when you're in a corporation and you can sponsor it and kind of push the kids into different areas. So our Navigo group, it's Kathy Stavros and Penny Hendy and myself. And each year we meet and we come up with a curriculum for students. And we have to solicit money, and the Bar Foundation in Northern Kentucky has been very generous in helping every single year that we've asked for money to help these legal scholars. And they have a mentor. And for example, one of the things we do is we have them attend a law school class at Chase. They get the cases ahead of time, just like the law students will, and they get to sit in the class, and the teachers at times will even ask them a question. So I'm a big believer, and probably because my parents were teachers, about education and starting with the high school students. And it is very rewarding. And I really hope that I can keep that up. Jim and I are going to be empty nesters after this year, so I may want to take a break for a year or two from high school, but it's very rewarding.
Well, and you referenced the collaborative too, and I want to make sure that, again, everyone who sees the video or who's in attendance, that they understand what the collaborative is and how it came about. It's just a great story as to the genesis of the program and how you've been involved in it and how it's helping people. Share with us about that.
I'm always happy to talk about collaborative, so anybody can call me and I'll talk to them forever about it. I would say over 22, 23 years ago, I remember sitting at a CLE. It was the Domestic Relations Institute over in Ohio in Hamilton County, and was sitting next to Ruth Jackson and speakers talking about this collaborative thing that they're doing. And we kind of looked at each other and said, why aren't we doing that over here? And there were lots of attorneys involved. We've got pictures from the first training. But we started the group, first group in Kentucky. And I think the other thing that I'm going to say is I had an opportunity when we started that to sit on that board. But I was also a mother of two very young children. And I was chair of the family law section at that time. So I declined. And so the other message I want to send to younger lawyers is it's okay to say no and know when to say no, because the opportunity is going to come back around, I promise you. So we did the trainings, sponsored the trainings, and started our group. And, you know, flash forward now, I've been president of the group. I think this is my third year. And last year was super challenging, just like it was for everybody. I felt like we had a lot of good momentum. Jefferson County has had a trained group. Fayette County has had a trained group. Bowling Green just has started a group in the past year. So we really are on the forefront of looking at something, bringing to people in Northern Kentucky another way to resolve their divorce issues that are outside of court. And the whole idea in the process is they're hiring us for the limited purpose of settling their case. We are promising that we are not going to litigate, and they sign a participation agreement that says that. So it's up to the attorneys and the training that we receive and advanced training to walk our clients through this negotiation model that we have. And if you work the process, it works. And I've had several clients that come back and say, can we go back to collaborative and renegotiate a parenting schedule or child support? So if you trust the process, it'll work. I know there's a lot of attorneys out there that say, oh, I'm not part of the collaborative group, but I can be collaborative. And I understand that. I think we can be cooperative, but I can't do a collaborative case with you. So again, the last year's been challenging and trying to keep our momentum with our group, but we did have more signed cases last year than we have in any other year. And I think a big piece of that is because of COVID and access to the courts. And we were able to keep going. We were able to resolve cases and get resolution for clients because we were able to pivot, and we were able to say, we can do this via Zoom, we can do this in Teams, and if people are comfortable, we can do it in person. So it's been a great success and something I'm obviously really passionate about because I believe in that process. I'm not a firm believer that our civil rules and our rules of evidence are what we need for every family law case. And I think that if we can resolve these things either in mediation or collaborative, you're going to get a better outcome and probably more satisfied clients.
Yeah, so you've put time and effort into this undertaking, and it's helped the practice, and it sounds rewarding at the same time, which is kind of when everything comes together the way it should, right?
Right.
That's what you hope for. And I want to move into a segment addressing maybe a little more directly professional responsibility issues, although I think that when we talk about practice development and doing that honorably and ethically through community service and developing expertise, all of those things enhance our professional responsibility. But what are some of the other issues that you see today out there with respect to professional responsibility that you're passionate about?
Grace I think the past 2 or 3 years, I've tried to start the year with a word. Um, One year the word was forward, and that was after my dad passed away, and that whole year was about just moving forward. This past year, my word was grace, and I think it's something that we all have to give each other. One thing that I see in our practice that I don't, it's a positive, but it's certainly a negative, is emails and communication and being on the job 24/7 every single day. And that's with clients and that's with other attorneys. And we don't sit behind our desk all day. And I have said emails aren't emails. It's an ongoing conversation you have that never ends. And if somebody out there knows how to manage that, please call me and tell me how to manage that. Because it's something we all talk about, is how overwhelming that is. And especially in a domestic practice where people aren't sleeping, they're up all night, and you receive a 2 or 3 page email that's single spaced. And you tell clients, I need time to kind of read what you've written, but also digest and give you a thoughtful response back. People have just quit using the telephone. Instead of picking up the phone and talking, it's, I'm going to shoot a text, I'm going to shoot an email, or I'm going to find you on Facebook and I'm going to send you an instant message. Just the number of ways that people can communicate with you that don't include calling your office. And that's super stressful. And I've talked to other attorneys about this too. And really with the family court too, it's so stressful because we carry our clients' very personal issues with us all the time. And, as attorneys, we do that, period. We carry our clients' problems with us, and that weighs on us. And we just don't get a break from it. So I think giving each other grace in a phone call, grace to get back to somebody, and not to the point that you put your client at a disadvantage, but just to also tell your client, this isn't Amazon. We can't solve everything and get it there same day or in 24 hours. Some days thoughtfulness is much better than the Amazon approach. But I have found, like our courts too, sometimes there's not a lot of grace given. And I wish that there was more grace given with that. And what I mean is, there is nothing wrong with calling an office and leaving a message. And you don't need the answer. If you don't need the answer immediately, give us a chance to call back. I think if you return a call in 24 hours, that's pretty good. But to track people down on their cell phones when they're driving and, maybe in the middle of a family issue, it's really stressful. And so professional responsibility, it's, I think, giving each other some grace and some room, and allowing each other to have those moments with our family. And I know, Rob, I shared with you some different examples of where I felt that didn't happen with people. But we've got to be able to say, this is one of those life moments. And a life moment to me means we're not going to get it back. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And let us participate in those, whether it's a kid's soccer tournament, a baseball game, somebody a child receiving their white coat, at UK because they're going into a doctor's program. I've got so many examples where I feel that attorneys have had to be put in that position of choosing. They choose their family or they choose their client. And sometimes we have to make that choice, but we shouldn't always have to make the choice to choose the client over our family. So
and I really like the idea that we need to nudge back from time to time and set some healthy, productive boundaries, because as part of our professional responsibility, we have to provide a strong level of service to all our clients. And in order to do that, we need some time with our families,
right,
too. And so I like your philosophy along those lines. And newer lawyers, even though you feel like you probably have to do it all and develop the business now and get everything going, I hope you'll find balance like Stephanie has. And Stephanie, in addition to that, the role, if you could comment on the role civility plays with our issues, professional responsibility and really effectiveness. How do you balance civility and effectiveness, or is a balance even necessary? What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely think balance is necessary. I would say that looking back, there were definitely times where I could have been better. I think the older you get, the more experienced you get, you kind of just, we all know we're each going through something. It's the saying, you don't know that the person standing next to you in the elevator is going through. You have to assume everybody's doing their best. We just, some people are doing their best just to get out of bed. The personal attacks on each other, I just don't find that there's any place for a personal attack on an attorney. You're there representing your client. You should do it zealously and be prepared. And that's not personal. I think I can walk into a courtroom and represent my client against any number of attorneys and walk out and ask them what they're going to do over the weekend. And then there's other attorneys that are going to take that very personally, that I did something against them. And that's not what it was about. I was hired to do a job, and I'm going to do that job. But when I walk out of that courtroom, and I'm not going to make a personal attack on the attorney either, but you got to be able to walk out and say, hey, you want to go grab a glass of wine, you can go to a ball game, you can do the social activities. But that stuff too helps you so that you can later on have that relationship when you're in court. I mean, I'm thinking of one or two attorneys now that I'm thinking of at the top of my head, and we can really go at it when we're in court. But they're also probably one of the first two attorneys that I call when I want to run something by them and say, hey, do you have a second? And they'll gladly give me 30 minutes of their time so I can run a scenario by them.
Well, and I think you probably have plenty of good war stories with your practice over the years. We have about 9 minutes left, so we're doing pretty well. If you have a couple of minutes to share a good one with us.
Well, I think one that you and I talked about, it still makes me giggle, and it's one Judge Mailing even talked about not too long ago. He said, was that your case? And I said, that was mine. I'm a paper person. I bring everything to court with me when I go because I don't know what I'm going to need. And I had all my discovery with me, and we were there on a hearing against the husband on contempt for not paying things. And Judge Mailing said, lock him up. He was getting ready just to put him in the holding cell. And the husband says, well, if you let me go back to my house, I can get the money out of the safe. And I thought, I did discovery, and I asked if there was a safe or a safety deposit box. And I pull it out, and I'm going through it. And I'm sure Judge Mailing was wondering, what is she doing? And there's the question, and he answers no. So I told the judge, he has said, no, there's no safe. He's just admitted there's a safe. So Judge Mailing sent me on a field trip, and I've gotten to go on 2 field trips the whole time I've been practicing. And sure enough, the guy had a safe built into the floors of the house. And when they pulled it out, it was all cash. And then the bands that go around cash, and Judge Mailing gave all the cash to my client. But so we were talking about that not too long ago. And just shows you bring everything with you to court because you never know when you're going to need it.
Well, amen. And hey, if you would tell us something about you that's not widely known that people might find interesting. And I can interject. She can do a mean karaoke. I don't think many people know that about you, but I'm sure you've got something better than that.
No, I mean, I would hope, and this to me is probably the most important thing that I do in my life is, I'm a mom, and I am so incredibly proud of my 2 boys, and and probably the thing I'm the most proudest of, it's not my business, it's not the volunteer work, but it's that Jim and I have been able to raise, we think, 2 pretty good humans, and watching them grow is just such a great reward. And being able to do the job that we do has allowed us to, it's not always flexible, but we've been able to be there for most of the things. And I would say to younger attorneys that are parents, the days are long and the years are short. And that is such a true statement as we're looking at, our last one graduating. And I can't believe where the time has gone, and all those days that were so long, and we're working so hard, and none of it really matters. What we're talking about now are the memories we made with our kids. We're not talking about the clients or what we had to give up. So I would hope that something people do know is just, number one's my family. It always has been, always will be.
Any final words of wisdom, wit, or advice for the next generation of lawyers here at Northern Kentucky before we move on to some questions?
Work hard, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And I think part of what we do as more experienced attorneys is give back with our time. And I think I'm always happy. I get mostly questions on adoptions, but I'm always here. I'm always willing to give a younger attorney the time to talk or to answer questions. So work hard and ask questions.
Well, fantastic. We'll move on to a few questions here. First question, family law is a very difficult area of the law to work in. However, there will always be people who are in need of such legal assistance. Do you have any advice for a new attorney considering working in the family law arena? Beyond perhaps what you've already shared with us today, anything in particular?
Start practicing criminal law.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, set boundaries immediately. So I don't know if the question's more focused on the practice or how you handle the two. It can quickly overlap. I have clients that become friends, and I try to keep those boundaries during the representation. So I don't want them as my Facebook friend. I don't want them to have my cell phone number. I don't want them to have all that information until the case is over. So if you're starting a family law practice, it's real easy. You become their best friend, but also remember that they love us now, but they're going to hate us at some point. So it's really important to keep those boundaries at the beginning. So I think that's really important for new. I see a lot of new attorneys putting their cell phone out there, and if that's what they're comfortable with, kudos to them until you're sitting, out to dinner or at a ball game or something, and you're getting a phone call. So that personally for me, that's just, I would not be putting my cell phone out there.
If you were out there trying to build a brand new law practice, would you emphasize the same points that we've discussed, the relationships and the kindnesses and the responsiveness? Is there anything new about developing a law practice as you see it today versus when you got your start?
Yeah, I think one of the things is introduce yourself to some of the more experienced attorneys. I turn away cases. I can't take them all, or sometimes there's a hearing set and I can't do it. Call me up, ask me for coffee, let's go to lunch, because I've got more cases than I can handle, and you're going to find that you're going to get referrals if you've reached out. So show up at some bar activities too, so that we can get to know you. And I think that's a great referral source.
Last question, how has technology, and I know you're still a paper person, but you're not completely paper. How's the technology changed the practice of family law?
Wow. So my rule is, if I see one more person screenshot a text message or screenshot something and send it to me so we can't print it, they just need to go somewhere else. Technology is my enemy. There is an app that we've discovered that will take emails and text messages and combine them all so that we can easily print and introduce them. So, but it's, I ask my law clerk every single day that he's here, about technology. It definitely has, because I think it's so paper intensive. People want to show you every text message somebody sent. Here's the proof. This is what they said. Every email. And that's the paper intensive part. I just finished a case that was very paper intensive. And what we did is we used a summary exhibit to introduce it all. So I will say, if you're not using a summary exhibit to get all of your evidence in, you need to look up the rule and use it, because we were able to get in thousands and thousands of pages of evidence using a summary exhibit. So technology has definitely changed, and I'm trying, if I had a whole lot of time, but I think being paperless is where we're headed. I just don't see that there's going to be another option.
Well, and there's another question here about the name of that app, and I know I think you said you were getting some help from somebody. Do you know the name of the app? If you're like me, you might know the app, but you wouldn't necessarily know the name.
That's exactly right. So whoever it is, if they email me, I will get them the name of the app because we give it.
Okay,
My assistant has it, and we give it out to our clients.
That's great. And as we wrap up today, on behalf of the NKBA, Stephanie, I want to thank you for your service to our profession and our region. You're truly an NKBA legend, even though you may not necessarily appreciate being referred to as one. We know that you've got the goods. And attendees, please join us for a new interview on the second Tuesday of each month for the duration of 2021. Next month on May 10th, we'll interview Jeff Mando. He's a longtime member of the NKBA and truly one of the premier litigators in all of Kentucky. NKBA Executive Director Julie Jones, who's been listening in. She's on standby if we need her during these programs. She's going to be sending out CLE information to our live attendees today. And please keep in mind that we want and we need your input at the NKBA. Contact us with program recommendations and other suggestions. Thank you so much for joining us and have a terrific day.